Samantha stepped into the grand lobby of the Riccio Grand, a beacon of elegance nestled in the heart of the city. The air shimmered with a golden glow from the towering crystal chandeliers, casting intricate patterns of light across the gleaming marble floors and towering columns. The scent of fresh lilies mingled with the subtle aroma of polished wood, creating an atmosphere both luxurious and inviting. After a relentless day filled with exhausting meetings, relentless political attacks, and the ever watchful glare of the media, Samantha longed for a sanctuary, a place where she could momentarily shed the weight of the world pressing down on her shoulders. Her footsteps echoed softly as she rolled her suitcase over the polished stone, each click reverberating like a heartbeat in the vastness of the lobby. Around her, the staff moved with quiet grace, their smiles practiced, their conversations hushed, blending seamlessly into the sophisticated background. For a brief moment, Samantha allowed herself to breathe, hoping this sanctuary would cradle her fragile spirit. The richness of the architecture, the whisper of silk dresses, and the gentle murmur of distant conversations seemed to promise a reprieve from the chaos outside. Yet, beneath this serene facade, a subtle shift tingled at the edge of her awareness. Something intangible but unmistakable. The elegance that once promised comfort now felt like a gilded cage, and the eyes that swept over her carried something more than mere curiosity. Despite the beauty surrounding her, an undercurrent of unease settled in Samantha's chest. This was supposed to be a haven, a brief escape from the storm. Instead, it was the quiet beginning of a confrontation she hadn't anticipated, one that would test her resolve in ways far beyond political debate. As she approached the front desk, Samantha's breath hitched ever so slightly. The calm before a storm that was only just beginning to brew beneath the polished surface of the Riccio Grand. The moment Samantha crossed the threshold into the Riccio Grand's lobby, the atmosphere shifted, a delicate but unmistakable change that prickled her skin like an electric current. The air, thick with the scent of polished marble and faint perfume, suddenly felt heavier, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. The usual symphony of hushed voices and soft footsteps seemed to dull, replaced by a silence laden with expectation and unspoken tension. Samantha's eyes darted around, searching for something familiar, but all she found were sharp, guarded gazes flickering her way, brief, calculating, and cold. The front desk staff, who moments ago had seemed absorbed in their work, now cast glances that lingered too long, filled with suspicion that cut through the elegance like a jagged blade. It was as though an invisible barrier had materialized, separating her from the rest of the world in this lavish space. The gentle murmur of other guests became a distant echo, their polite smiles masking a judgment that made Samantha's chest tighten with unease. Every detail, the glint of crystal, the smoothness of the marble, even the soft hum of the air conditioning, felt distorted, turned sinister by the oppressive weight pressing down on her. She tried to steady herself, to find comfort in the beauty that surrounded her, but the calm facade crumbled under the weight of dozens of watchful eyes. Each breath she took felt heavier, as if the very air resisted her presence. Samantha's heart quickened, the sense of alienation wrapping around her like a cold cloak. This was no longer the serene refuge she had imagined. It was a battlefield cloaked in silk and stone, where she was already marked and isolated. In that charged stillness, Samantha understood she was no longer just a guest here. She was a target, stepping into an unseen war she had yet to fully grasp. Samantha's gaze locked onto the front desk where a young woman sat with an icy focus that sent a chill straight through her. Avery? Her hair dyed a striking shade of icy blue that clashed sharply with the muted elegance of the lobby. Typed rapidly, her fingers tapping the keyboard like a metronome in the thick silence. But it wasn't the sound of the keys that unsettled Samantha. It was the deliberate way Avery avoided meeting her eyes, as if acknowledging her presence was beneath contempt. The subtle tension radiating from Avery was impossible to ignore, her posture rigid, shoulders squared, a cold barrier erected between them. Samantha's instincts screamed that this wasn't mere indifference. It was something far more deliberate, a silent yet potent message of rejection. As she stood frozen, Samantha studied Avery closely. The tight line of her jaw, the flicker of a smirk that vanished the moment their eyes brushed. and the way she exuded an aura of quiet hostility, masked by professional composure. Around them, the world seemed to slow, the usual bustle of the lobby fading into a muted backdrop, as if everyone else sensed the silent confrontation unfolding. Avery's deliberate avoidance wasn't just about a job well done. It was a calculated act of exclusion, a refusal to acknowledge Samantha's right to be there. The stark contrast between the luxurious surroundings and Avery's cold demeanor made the room feel smaller, the space between them charged with an invisible current of power and resistance. Samantha's heartbeat quickened, every instinct on edge, as she realized this woman was not merely an employee fulfilling a task, but a gatekeeper standing firm against her entry. The elegance of the Riccio Grand suddenly felt like a facade masking a deeper undercurrent of tension and unwelcome, a tension that centered entirely on her. In that moment, Samantha knew that the battle she had anticipated was no longer looming on the horizon. It was already here, embodied in the icy stare and silent defiance of Avery across the counter. Unable to contain the mounting tension any longer, Samantha finally broke the silence by tapping gently yet firmly on the polished surface of the front desk. The sharp sound sliced through the heavy stillness like a sudden thunderclap, forcing Avery's attention away from her screen. For a fleeting moment, Avery's icy blue eyes met Samantha's, an exchange electric with unspoken words, but just as quickly, her gaze slipped away, retreating into the safety of the glowing monitor. Samantha caught the faintest flicker of recognition, or was it disdain in those cold eyes, a silent acknowledgement of who she was and everything she represented. Avery's voice, when it came, was smooth but laced with a barely concealed edge. "How can I assist you?" she asked, her tone polite on the surface, but dripping with an undercurrent of sarcasm. Samantha's lips curled into a composed smile, though her blood simmered beneath her skin. "I have a reservation," she said crisply, enunciating each word with deliberate clarity, "under the name Samantha Harper." The moment Avery ceased typing, Samantha felt the air thicken, every heartbeat pounding louder in her ears. Instead of looking up, Avery's eyes flicked sideways, a smirk tugging at the corner of her mouth as if savoring a private joke. "Samantha Harper," she repeated, her voice slow and taunting. "I've heard of you. Quite the voice in political circles, aren't you?" The word political lingered in the air like a challenge, coated in mockery and judgment. Samantha felt the sting but refused to flinch. She demanded Avery check again, her voice steady but firm, unwavering in the face of the subtle venom. Avery's response was a dismissive brush-off. "Our system shows no reservation under that name. Perhaps there's been a mistake." Then came the real blow, words laced with thinly veiled contempt. "We do prioritize guests with more open-minded views." Samantha blinked, stunned. "Open-minded?" she echoed, her voice icy now. "Are you saying I'm not welcome here?" Avery's grin widened, cold and unapologetic. "I didn't say that," she replied smoothly, "but this is a place with standards. Not everyone fits." The dismissal was palpable, a slap disguised as etiquette. Samantha's breath caught, the weight of exclusion pressing down hard, but she stood resolute, her voice cutting through the growing silence. "This is discrimination, and I will not stand for it." Surrounded by the opulence of the Riccio Grand, Samantha felt a gnawing unease tighten its grip around her heart. She had come seeking solace, a brief respite from the storm of her relentless public battles, yet here she was, trapped in a gilded cage of silent hostility. Avery's gaze was like a sharpened blade, aimed not just at her presence, but at the very ideals she embodied. It was clear now, this was not a mere mix-up or innocent oversight. It was a calculated rejection, rooted deeply in the disdain for what Samantha represented. As she glanced discreetly around, she noticed the subtle shifts among the other guests. A few cast sidelong glances filled with judgment, their eyes narrowing as if silently condemning her mere existence in this space. A middle-aged man at the bar shook his head with thinly veiled displeasure, while a woman adorned in designer clothes turned away with a cold, dismissive glance that cut sharper than any words. The chilling realization sank in. This was not just Avery's battle. It was a shared conspiracy of silence and complicity. No one spoke up. No one offered a shield of solidarity. Instead, they bore witness with a quiet acceptance that felt like betrayal. The murmurs and whispered laughter that floated through the lobby seemed like a cruel soundtrack to her humiliation. amplifying the sting of isolation. Each passing second deepened the fracture inside her, the crushing weight of exclusion pressing down as if to erase her from this world entirely. Samantha stood tall, yet inside, the fire of indignation burned hotter, fueled by the blatant injustice. The luxury surrounding her felt cold and hollow, mocking her vulnerability and casting her as an outsider, an anomaly to be ignored or scorned. But beneath the hurt, resolve crystallized, a fierce determination to not be diminished, not be silenced. This moment, steeped in humiliation and prejudice, was a crucible forging her strength. Samantha knew that to walk away now, to bow under the weight of this discrimination, would be to surrender far more than a reservation. It would be to relinquish her dignity and the fight for respect that so many like her deserved. Frustration simmering beneath her composed exterior, Samantha reached into her purse and pulled out her phone, the cold glass screen a stark contrast to the heat building inside her. Her fingers trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the surge of determination flooding her veins. With a steadying breath, she dialed Josh, her trusted assistant who had stood by her through countless battles, both political and personal. The ringing seemed to echo in the vast, silent lobby, a steady drumbeat marking the countdown to justice. When Josh's calm voice answered on the other end, Samantha wasted no time. Her words poured out, sharp, urgent, commanding, as she detailed the blatant discrimination she was facing. She explained how Avery had refused her service, insulted her, and worse, manipulated the hotel's system to erase her reservation entirely. I need you to access their database, dig into every email, every record, she instructed firmly. I want concrete proof, irrefutable evidence that this was deliberate. The weight of the situation pressed heavily, yet Samantha's resolve never wavered. She knew that without undeniable proof, her fight could easily be dismissed as mere accusation. Josh's voice reassured her. Steady and methodical as always, I'll get on it right now. It may take some time, but I'll find everything you need. Hanging up, Samantha pocketed the phone, a flicker of hope igniting within her. Around her, the opulent lobby buzzed with indifferent chatter and soft footsteps, but to Samantha, it felt distant and detached, as though the entire world was watching from behind a glass wall, yet powerless to intervene. Her eyes scanned the room, noting the judgmental stares, the quiet whispers, the polite avoidance. Yet none of that could penetrate the armor of purpose she now wore. The fight was no longer just about a reservation or a single act of cruelty. It was a battle for dignity, for justice, and for every voice that had ever been silenced. Samantha steeled herself for what lay ahead, knowing that the truth was her greatest weapon, and with Josh on her side, she was ready to wield it. The familiar ping of a new message jolted Samantha's attention, her heart skipping a beat as she hurriedly unlocked her phone. The screen illuminated with Josh's words, clear, precise, undeniable proof that shattered any remaining doubt. Avery had deliberately deleted Samantha's reservation from the system at exactly 5:18 p.m., moments after recognizing who she was. The data was irrefutable. Every alteration, every erased trace, meticulously recorded in the hotel's logs. Samantha's breath caught, the heavy cloud of humiliation and frustration lifting as a surge of vindication swept through her veins. The quiet power of the truth settled over her like armor, transforming vulnerability into strength. With this evidence, the balance of power had shifted. No longer the victim, Samantha was now the arbiter of justice, holding in her hands the key to exposing Avery's calculated betrayal. Around her, the lobby's luxurious walls and sparkling chandeliers seemed to pulse with renewed energy, as if sensing the turning tide of the battle unfolding within their midst. Samantha's fingers danced across the screen as she fired off a sharp, determined response to Josh, commanding every detail, every document be sent her way. The fight was no longer abstract. It was tangible, within reach. The thought of confronting Avery, armed with proof and unyielding resolve, ignited a fierce fire inside her. Her steps toward the front desk felt deliberate and measured, each one echoing like a drumbeat of impending reckoning across the polished marble floor. She was walking not just through a hotel lobby, but into a battlefield where truth was her weapon and justice her cause. The eyes that had once weighed her down now seemed to flicker with curiosity and unease, sensing the shift in momentum. Samantha's spine straightened, her gaze sharp and unwavering, as she prepared to claim the dignity that had been so callously stripped away. This was her moment, a declaration that she would not be erased, silenced, or humiliated. With every breath, Samantha embraced the power of truth, ready to transform injustice into victory. Nicholas entered the lobby with a quiet yet commanding presence, every step resonating with the weight of authority that seemed to shift the very air around him. The room fell into a hush as heads turned, the murmurs fading into a tense silence. Samantha's heart fluttered with a mix of relief and anticipation. Her older brother was not just family, but the very force behind the Riccio Grand, a man whose word shaped the fate of this place. His sharp eyes swept over the crowd before settling on Avery, who sat frozen behind the desk, her confident facade cracking under his unwavering gaze. The arrogance that had once radiated from her now flickered with uncertainty, as if she suddenly understood the magnitude of the storm she had unleashed. Nicholas approached steadily, his voice low, but carrying the unmistakable edge of command as he demanded answers. Avery's lips parted, hesitation slipping into her voice as she stumbled through weak excuses, but Nicholas cut her off sharply. There was no room for lies or justification here. You knew exactly who Samantha was, he declared, his tone cutting through the tension like a blade. And you chose to erase her reservation. That's unforgivable. The silence that followed was suffocating, every eye locked onto Avery's pale face, watching as the weight of truth settled heavily upon her. Samantha stood tall beside her brother, feeling a surge of pride swell within her chest. This was no longer her fight alone. With Nicholas by her side, the tide had turned irrevocably. The man who built this grand hotel had just drawn a line in the sand. We built this place on respect and fairness, Nicholas continued, voice steady yet relentless. Anyone who abuses their position to discriminate will face consequences. Avery's trembling hands betrayed her panic as she realized the inevitability of her downfall. The grandeur of the Riccio Grand no longer shielded her from accountability. With a final, cold decree, Nicholas pronounced her termination, effective immediately. As Avery retreated, the lobby erupted in a mix of stunned silence and tentative applause. Samantha's eyes never left her brother's steady gaze, knowing this moment marked not just a personal victory, but a powerful stand for justice that would echo far beyond these walls. News of Avery's dismissal rippled through the digital world with the force of a tidal wave, igniting fierce debates and fiery discussions across social media platforms. Samantha watched the storm unfold on her phone screen, each notification a fresh surge of emotion. Messages of unwavering support mingling with sharp criticisms that cut just as deeply as the discrimination she had faced. Supporters hailed her as a beacon of courage, a warrior standing boldly against injustice, their words filling her with renewed strength. Thank you for fighting not just for yourself, but for all of us, one comment read, echoing the sentiment of thousands who found hope in her resilience. But shadows lurked among the praise. Detractors accused Samantha of abusing her influence, turning a personal grievance into a political spectacle, and even questioned the fairness of Avery's firing. The backlash was relentless, a storm of voices seeking to drown out the message she fought so hard to amplify. Yet through the cacophony, Samantha remained resolute. She understood that true change was never without opposition, that every victory carved a path through resistance and doubt. The digital battleground was just as fierce as the one she faced in the lobby, and here too she was locked in a struggle, not just for her dignity, but for the principle of equality itself. As hashtags trended and debates raged, Samantha's message rippled further, touching hearts and minds far beyond the walls of the Riccio Grand. She became a symbol, not just of defiance against discrimination, but of the power one individual holds to challenge systemic injustice. With every share, every retweet, her story galvanized a movement, inspiring those silenced by fear to find their own voices. Despite the weight of the controversy, Samantha's spirit soared. She wasn't alone. She stood with countless others fighting battles of their own. The war for justice was far from over, but the line had been drawn, and Samantha was ready to lead the charge. Under the warm glow of the auditorium lights, Samantha stood poised on the stage, her presence commanding yet infused with a quiet strength that held the audience captive. faces blurred in the dimness, but the weight of their collective gaze pressed upon her with the gravity of shared expectation. Taking a steady breath, she began, her voice resonant, clear, and unwavering, telling a story far greater than her own. She spoke not only of the injustice she had endured within the walls of the Riccio Grande, but of a universal struggle against discrimination, oppression, and the silent forces that seek to marginalize the vulnerable. Her words wove a tapestry of courage and hope, a call to arms for all who had ever been silenced or dismissed. This fight, she declared, is not mine alone. It belongs to every soul who has faced cruelty because of who they are or what they believe. We must stand not just for ourselves, but for those who cannot. The room fell into a profound hush, the weight of her message settling like a balm over restless hearts. Samantha's eyes scanned the crowd, meeting the tear-filled gazes and nods of affirmation, the sparks of conviction igniting within. She spoke of the power of truth to shatter walls built on fear and hatred, and of the relentless pursuit of justice as a beacon to guide the weary. As she closed, her smile, soft but fierce, radiated a sense of fulfillment and resolve, the smile of a woman who had claimed her voice and vowed never to let it be muted. The applause that followed was thunderous, a roaring affirmation that Samantha's story was no longer just a personal triumph, but a rallying cry for change. In that moment, she was not merely a survivor, she was a leader, a symbol of resilience and unwavering hope, inspiring a world hungry for justice to rise alongside her and carry the torch forward.